Hi there, this is Dr. John Whitcomb giving a update on my news and nutrition about the real cause of heart disease, sulfate deficiency. This is really interesting. In fact, I believe it. If you were to follow Stephanie Seneff from MIT, she's published this work in a couple different journal places, but recently did a conference in San Francisco. But let me give you just a 3-minute summary to try to explain it to you to make it simple. It's actually not a complicated concept. I want you to think about, first of all, if you think of a capillary that's where blood flows through in your body being this big, red cells are that big. They're a little bit bigger. Now, for a red cell to get through that little capillary, it's going to have to fold over in half, but it can't possibly make it if it sticks to the side. Now, what's going to make it not stick to the side of that capillary? Electrical charges. Have you ever taken a magnet and put two magnets next to each other? You know, you put them next to each other and you push them against each other and they repel each other, right? Sulfate on the surface of red cells, which is coated with sulfate molecules, cause what Dr. Seneff calls structured water. And it gets water molecules to line up in just a little bit of a dipole fashion, in effect, little mini magnets. And so the surface of it's just ever so slightly got this mini magnet effect, as does the surface of your capillaries, which is also coated with sulfate. Well, what happens if you don't eat enough sulfate? What happens if you don't have enough in your diet? Then you're not going to have enough sulfate to coat your arteries or your red blood cells. And you're not going to be able to create a negative charge that allows your blood cells to flow smoothly. Because you can imagine you now have a negatively charged red cell inside of a capillary, and it's going to slither right on through because they're pushing each other like magnets. Now, when a magnet moves across an electrical field, it makes a voltage. That's how engines work. And that tiny bit of microelectricity sets off nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is then manufactured in your blood vessels and makes your blood vessels relax. That leads to good, healthy blood vessels. So where does the cholesterol come in? Well, cholesterol is circulating in your blood as cholesterol sulfate. That's what makes it water soluble. And the harvesting of the sulfate leaves cholesterol as a byproduct. The cholesterol then accumulates in your blood vessels as a byproduct. The real problem was all about the sulfate and collecting the sulfate. So cholesterol happens to be a secondary response. Now, the reason I've gotten so interested in this is because I've been reading about Lester Morrison, and if you follow my blog on news and nutrition, in late May of 2017, I wrote about Lester Morrison. And Lester Morrison is a cardiologist at Loma Linda who was giving chondroitin sulfate to people and reversing coronary artery disease. This idea just has to be followed. So what will work for me? Well, I'm currently now starting taking chondroitin sulfate as part of my everyday diet. I'm also eating the chondroitin of animals. When I eat chickens, I'm eating some of the chicken bone, the white cartilage on the end of the bone, and chewing that. Our parents used to do that back in the 1930s and 40s when they ate everything on the hog but the squeal, or everything on the chicken but the tail. They used to harvest the whole animal. In the last 100 years, our butchers have made our meat so cleaned up we don't get chondroitin in our diet anymore, and so we don't get sulfate. Add to that we're eating sugar and we're eating white flour, none of which have any sulfate in them. The real cause of heart disease, perhaps, is sulfate deficiency. This is Dr. John Whitcomb wishing you good insight. Thank you.